This equation that we have is pretty complex because not only do we have a variable on both sides of the equation, but that variable is inside a set of parentheses and there's a constant outside the set of parentheses, meaning that we're going to have to use the distributive property. In fact, the distributive property is the first thing that we're going to do in this equation. So let's start off by doing that. This 6 outside the parentheses needs to get multiplied by both items inside the parentheses. So we'll do 6 times 5m, which is 30m. And then we'll do 6 multiplied by negative 3, which is negative 18. And then on the other side, we're going to be multiplying a fraction, 1/3 multiplied by 24. Now, there's no reason to panic and bust out the calculator for multiplying by 1/3. Multiplying by 1/3 is the same thing as dividing by 3. So when we say 1/3 multiplied by 24, we are also asking 24 divided by 3, which is just 8. So 8m. And then 1/3 times 12 just means 12 divided by 3. 1/3 of 12 is 12 divided by 3, which is 4. Okay, and so that is the result after doing the distributive property. Okay, great. So after we've done the distributive property, we still have the problem of two variables on both sides, but now those variables are no longer in the grouping symbols, so we're able to get them on the same side of the equal sign, which is going to be our next step. So let's go ahead and do that. We can either subtract 30m on both sides, or we can subtract 8m on both sides. So if we have two options, we want to think a little bit ahead and ask ourselves which one of those options is going to end up being easier in the long run. And the easier option here is the one that's going to yield a positive number, which we get by subtracting 8m. Subtracting 30m would be fine. Subtracting 30m would give us the correct answer, but we would end up with 8 minus 30, which gives us a negative number. Nothing wrong with negative numbers, but if we can avoid them, why not? So the 8m's cancel on the right side, and on the left side, we'll be left with 30 minus 8, which is 22. So 22m. We'll bring down our minus 18. And on the right side, we have 4. And when we subtract something on both sides of the equal sign, this is the subtraction property of equality. Okay. Now we're 2 steps away from the answer. We can either divide everything by 22, or we can add 18. Clearly, dividing by 22 right now is going to give us some fractions, which is fine, but will certainly be more difficult than if we use the addition property of equality right now and just add 18 to both sides. That allows us to avoid fractions. Negative 18 plus 18 is 0. And so we end up with something very nice, which is 22m on the left side and 22 on the right side. And it's rare that we get a problem easier than this in algebra. That was the addition property of equality because we added 18 on both sides. And the last thing we're going to do is divide by 22 using the division property of equality. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out that 22 divided by 22 is 1. So we believe our final answer is 1, using the division property of equality. And so whenever we have variables on both sides of the equal sign, our goal is to get those variables on the same side so that we just have one variable in the problem. But in this case, there was a step we had to do before that. Because the variables were inside those grouping symbols, before we could start moving the variables around, we first had to get them out of the grouping symbols. And then once the grouping symbols were gone, after doing the distributive property, then we could collect the variables on the same side of the equals.